Chat, this video we're watching right now, and the reason why I wanted to watch this video is every now and then I like to just kind of like observe the landscape of MMOs. And not that active player count should be a reason why you should play or pick up a game, but I also like to watch videos like this just to see like, hey, you know, how is that MMO that I played maybe a year ago, maybe 5 years ago, how is that MMO doing currently? And this is an updated list here presented to us by Lucky Ghost. And I've watched about 3 minutes of the video, but it's really well put together, and I wanted to watch the whole thing with you guys. So let's take a look.
Hey guys, welcome back. It's Lucky here, and it's that time of the year where we look at the MMO genre and go over the most played MMOs right now. A lot has changed since the last time I made this video. We've seen some MMOs move way up on the list and some move way down. This video is strictly by the numbers, which means I'm not ranking them by quality, simply by active player base size. Which MMOs are dying? Which MMOs are thriving? Let's find out. Number 15, New World. Playable on PC and soon to come to console. This survey is coming at a bad time for New World. It's currently experiencing its worst month in its history, but it hasn't come out of nowhere. The game has been bleeding players for some time now, sliding another 4 spots from number 11 on this list to number 15 in the last 6 months alone, and presently averaging just 4,800 players on Steam.
Dude, look at that. Man, we were looking at this the other day. Hold on. This is what's so crazy about New World. Its all-time peak from 3 years ago was 913,000 players. That is crazy. That is wild. Guys, 913,000. What is the record? Who even holds the record? That's got to be up there in like the top 3. New World was 3 years ago? Yeah, man. Yeah. Amazon pushed it hard with ad streams. Dude, we were hyped. Man, New World grabbed me by the balls in the beta. Name how many games you commit 200 hours to in the beta alone. I dropped 200 hours in the beta. I was in love with New World. And then I don't know what happened. It was just like after about a month of it. Well, I mean, I have a good idea what happened. We just got to the end game and there was, okay, what do? We wait for these world bosses to spawn and we kill them over and over and we get, you know, some small stat bumps here and there, and that was it, at least initially, right? We also had wars every single day, almost to the point that it got tiring. It was like not everyone was available, and so it was like constant barrages of wars, where eventually it got to the point where I was like defending our settlement, and Bayou Boys, our clan, we had a settlement of our own, but we got to the point where it was like none of our ace players were on because it was like weird hours that the wars were taking place at, and eventually we lost it. Destiny 2's peak is 316,000. Yeah. Keep in mind that's just on Steam. New World is coming, wasn't at console, but yeah, that just tells you like there is a very large player base that's looking to invest their time into an MMORPG.
Averaging just 4,800 players on Steam. Just 6 months ago, it was at 19,000 concurrent players on Steam. What happened? Well, New World is currently making a not so smooth transition to console at the moment. It seems that the focus on bringing the game to console has led to a massive drought in content for the experienced players sitting at the end game. Combine that with the fact that they're advertising it as a multiplayer action RPG instead of an MMO, and longtime players of the game are feeling a bit rattled. Is New World a bad game? I don't think so. As far as MMOs go, New World is one of the most fairly monetized ones out there, featuring very little in the way of things that could be considered pay to win. The game is buy to play with an optional battle pass. New World features a massive seamless open world for you to explore, and that's where it really shines. It shines when you're out exploring, questing, and gathering, and all of the things that you stumble into along the way. It's always really struggled when it came to group content and getting people into that content. The game features some of the best crafting progression out of any MMO. Every tree, bush, or rock can be gathered to level up your crafting and gathering. New World features the trinity of tank, healer, and DPS, and has some incredibly challenging dungeons and a mutation system for those dungeons that basically acts as a Mythic Plus system from WoW. This content can be fun, but also difficult to find groups for, especially with the current player count. As for its transition to console, well, it felt like this game was perfectly suited for that with its limited number of abilities that you can have at any given moment. It looks like the developers sacrificed a lot of the PC player count to get the game to console. Hopefully this is a gamble that plays off for them in the long run and they're able to bring those players back.
Well, you know, I don't know, man. I think that obviously having more players there on the console front would buffer the numbers a lot more, and maybe console players will like it a lot. You know, I personally love the combat system. I think that the combat system in New World is one of the best combat systems I've experienced in an MMORPG. You know, it's not static. The PvP is pretty fun, and it is what they're promoting as like an action RPG in a way. It's I don't know. New World is one of those games that we'll have to study and see. Just I don't know. What were the things that undercut that game's player base? Was it the lack of MMO elements? Did not fully dive into MMORPGs or in those MMORPG aspects. I will say the crafting system and the gathering system and stuff like that, although extremely amazing, you could level those things up. It was really, really fast. I think the other thing is too is like, nothing feels worse than whenever you join a server and that server is just dead. And I wonder how they're doing with their servers and consolidating their player base, because dude, even us, we were on a packed server. We were having difficulty finding players to play and some of those in-game activities just because there was just no one there to play it. All right, let's continue.
Sacrificed a lot of the PC player count to get the game to console. Hopefully this is a gamble that plays off for them in the long run and they're able to bring those players back. Holding on to spot number 14, EVE Online is a dependable old MMO released all the way back in 2003, but still being actively supported by both its developers and its fans. EVE Online is an MMO where your goal is to build and upgrade a powerful spaceship so that you can join up with others to vie for control of the most profitable sectors of space. EVE Online is free to play with the option to pay money to do things like access more spaceships.
It's a cool game,
sooner.
man.
It also has an optional sub, and this optional sub is the most expensive subscription on the list, sitting at $20 per month. As with most optional subs, fans of the game will often tell you that if you intend to fully enjoy the game, the sub is not so optional. EVE Online has a fantastic character creator, but that matters very little as you'll rarely see your character. Your focus is on your ship, and it's what you'll spend most of your time controlling. In EVE Online, players form their own alliances and then battle for control of the universe. PvP in EVE Online is high stakes, as when
you say you need money for this game, like what do you like? Because you just paid the subscription, right? We played this game. We actually did a stream of this game, and I thought the ships were so cool, man. And like they scale. I mean, dude, we had someone join us, and they had such a loaded out ship, cash money. So it does have pay to win aspects. People spend hundreds of dollars for OP ships. Damn, that's not good. That's not good, dude. Oh, rip.
Your ship is destroyed, it does not simply respawn. No, you must rebuild it again. The many hours, days, and months worth of materials it took to build that ship are now gone. EVE Online is often called the spreadsheet simulator, as many players engage in tracking materials and costs diligently. CCP Games has finally embraced this and has added an integrated spreadsheet into the game. EVE Online was never the biggest MMO, but it and its fans have kept it on the list for over 2 decades. Next,
basically, every MMO has pay to win aspects. I don't think so. I think there are definitely MMOs out there that have a subscription model, but they're not pay to win. But we'll continue watching.
Slipping one spot is SWTOR, or Star Wars: The Old Republic, launched in 2011 and available on PC. BioWare has handed this game off to a new developer to keep it up and running as they move on to new projects. Typically, this does not bode well for the future of an MMO. SWTOR launched in 2011, developed by BioWare and published by EA. This is another MMO that is now free to play with an optional sub. That optional sub will unlock a lot of things, but most importantly, it will give you access to all of the game's zones, and forever, even if you only sub for 1 month and then cancel. Veterans of the game will tell you that's exactly what you want to do if you want to fully experience SWTOR. SWTOR is probably most known for its amazing class stories that immerse you in the world of Star Wars. The class stories are fully voice acted and are incredibly well fleshed out and written. Perhaps the most unique part of these stories is that your choices actually have an impact on the ending of your story, with up to 3 different endings possible for each class.
That's unusual for an MMORPG.
One of the coolest parts of SWTOR, hands down. Nowadays, SWTOR is largely a single-player experience, and if you've never done it before, it could be a lot of fun, particularly if you're a fan of the Star Wars universe. You'll get your Star Wars music, art, stories, and lightsabers. The game features 8 classes, split 4 and 4 between Jedi and Sith factions, with a lot of overlap between the classes on each side, almost as if one side is a near mirror image of the other side. It's not a bad game to pick up and play with a friend, as it does feature level scaling, which has unfortunately resulted in the questing experience becoming perhaps too easy. So you'd definitely be jumping in for the story and not the challenge. The game's population has definitely been sliding over the years, albeit slowly, but now the developer has given the game away, which means its future has never been more uncertain. We'll watch this one closely moving forward. And if you're someone that enjoys MMOs, be sure to subscribe to the channel so that you're kept up.
I gotta say, man, I'm getting like like Clone War vibes. Maybe not from this particular scene, but from the other scenes for sure.
To date on all the latest and greatest MMO news. Number 12, Wizard 101, released in 2008
Oh my God.
on PC and web browsers. I didn't previously include Wizard 101 on this list, but it turns out this game has enough players to make the cut. Currently sitting at number 12, Wizard 101 was a gateway into the MMO scene for many children around 2008 when it launched. It's still going strong today and still getting new updates regularly.
Yo, remember
the game
this
lists
game?
itself as free to play, but it would be more honest to call it free to try, as you'll need a sub in order to access all the game's best and most relevant content. It's definitely a unique entry featuring a card collecting style of combat, but it does also include your more usual MMO staples like housing and fishing. And despite its humble beginnings, it's still sitting here comfortably, holding down the number 12th spot 16 years after its initial release. And next up, moving up one spot from number 12 to number 11 is Albion Online. Now, if you're watching this video and you're thinking to yourself, man, I'm already burnt out on all of these MMOs, perhaps it's time for you to check out the sponsor of today's video, Neverness to Everness. You can pre-register for the game right now by clicking the link in the description below. In this fast-paced urban RPG built in Unreal Engine 5, you can explore a massive supernatural metropolis brimming with wonders and extraordinary creatures. You'll use your powers to take down anomalies and epic battles that will leave your heart racing. While you explore, you'll be able to buy and deck out your home and make it truly your own. But your house isn't the only thing you can customize. You can customize your car until it's perfect for you, just like GTA, or use anti-gravity abilities to explore the urban landscapes. In NTE, the world is packed with lively events to ensure that this open world game is anything but empty. The high-quality graphics and amazing artistic design gives you a fantastic visual experience, enhancing the wide variety of companions that you'll encounter on your journey. You'll even be able to deepen your relationship with those companions.
Let me just say, dude, if the future involves anime women walking around like in real life, the world is done. We will be the last generation. At least we'll all be happy.
And unravel all of the mysteries within. So don't miss out on the chance to play this epic game at launch. Click the link in the description below to pre-register for the game now. It's completely free, so you've got nothing to lose. Massive shout out to Hutto Studios and Perfect World Games for being kind enough to sponsor this video. Thank you so much.
Because everything is so rosy right now. So you're saying that an anime AI being walking around is okay? Yeah, maybe it is the way to go. Maybe it is. Ooh, I fucking trial and error. You know what I mean? So let's just fucking see what happens. I mean, maybe that solves everything.
And thank you guys for listening. Now let's get back to the video. Launched in 2017 to PC, Mac, iOS, and Android. Albion Online is a fantasy sandbox MMORPG that was released 7 years ago now. It's free to play, but it's also 100% pay to win. And it's not for the faint of heart. Albion Online is a full loot PvP MMO. Now, because it is full loot, that means that you can let someone else pay to win and then kill them and take all of their gear. Fortunately, if you lose a full loot PvP fight, it's not too terribly difficult to recover from. Most players are only running around with gear that's worth about 1% of their net worth. So once you've been looted, all you have to do is head to the auction house, click a button, and it repurchases your previous loadout. The game features a pretty massive progression tree where the more you use something, the more you level it up and unlock things down that branch of the tree. Albion Online does feature an optional sub that will greatly reduce the grind. The game's population has been steadily increasing since 2018, helping it climb up to the number 11th spot on the most played MMOs list. If you're looking for something different and high stakes,
So wait a minute. A game that has super pay to win aspects is trending upwards? How? Who did this? I haven't played this game, but he literally opened with the first line is this. Hold on.
Albion Online is a fantasy sandbox MMORPG that was released 7 years ago now. It's free to play, but it's also 100% pay to win.
100% pay to win.
18, helping it climb up to the number 11th spot on the most played MMOs list. If you're looking for something different and high stakes that feels like a MOBA and an MMO merged into one beautiful creature, Albion Online might be a great choice for you. Next up, we have WoW Classic, seeing the largest population decline of all the MMOs on this list since the last time I updated it. This is partly because of how well it was doing 6 months ago when we checked in on it at the launch of Season of Discovery. It had experienced a massive population boom, whereas now the Classic community has largely experienced what they wanted to in Season of Discovery, and they're waiting for more and new content. Players tend to come back to WoW Classic and devour the content for a week or two before wandering off to play other games again. In March of 2017, Blizzard finally caved and announced that they would be making World of Warcraft Classic. World of Warcraft Classic launched to massive appeal, much to the surprise of Blizzard, who had thought there was no way players would ever want a Classic server. It's impressive that a spin-off for a version of a 2-decade-old MMO sits this high on the list, and this isn't the only time you'll see that happen. World of Warcraft Classic was a return to WoW before its controversial additions like raid finders, excessive cash shops, and the WoW token. WoW Classic is the classic MMO experience through and through. Slower.
Dude, isn't that not crazy? Like RuneScape did the exact same thing. They introduced updates that were terrible to the game, most notably evolution of combat. And then they made the player experience so bad that they said, hey, we're going to give you back old school RuneScape before these shite updates. And it blew the game back up. It's crazy how that happens. So you can literally make money by introducing bad updates and then just going backwards. Now, it's a short-term fix, right? It's just short, because eventually it's like, once you get past all the old stuff, all the nostalgia, is that going to be enough to keep you on?
Combat and a strict adherence to the trinity of tank, healer, and DPS. Players actually have to use crowd control abilities and still have to try to avoid aggroing too many mobs. It's going to be interesting to see how long this nostalgia-fueled trip through Classic WoW can maintain its steam, and how many seasons it will be able to continue getting players to return for. If we look at the trends for WoW Classic, we can see its explosive launch in 2019, followed by a moderate level of interest in the months and the years to follow. Interest fell off heavily, but the addition of Season of Discovery was able to bring a lot of those players.
That's a good peak. That's a really good peak. I know I'm blocking it right now. Here, let me actually. That's a solid peak. I mean, yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people looking at this like, oh my God, dead game. This is also, you know, it's Google search. But the main thing is when you see peaks like that again, after it's been out for a few years, that's a great sign. So it's, you know, starting to make a few higher highs, lower highs, things like that.
Back. Season of Discovery interest has largely waned for now, and players seem to be just about done finishing up their Panda experience as well. Will we someday see WoW Classic take the route of old school RuneScape and carve its entirely own path, completely forking from the story of retail WoW? I don't think this is just a possibility. I think it's a necessity if they ever want to see players stick around for more than 2 weeks at a time. WoW Classic was number 4 on this list the last time I made it, but it slid all the way down to number 10 now. Its population is still impressive for a spin-off of an existing MMO, and further proof that there's a massive appetite for the classic MMO experience out there. Holding strong at number 9 is RuneScape, also known as RuneScape 3, a fantasy MMORPG originally built with Java to be played inside of your browser. My friends were playing this MMO on library computers all the way back in the early 2000s. Over 20 years.
Dude, y'all remember, anyone here have a keyboarding class, a typing class, where you had to learn how to type? Dude, RuneScape. We would all be sneaking getting on RuneScape the entire time.
Later, this game is still outrageously popular, so let's take a look at it. RuneScape is interesting because there's RuneScape and then there's old school RuneScape. We'll get into old school RuneScape later. Right now, we're going to be talking about RuneScape or RuneScape 3.
Because old school RuneScape is probably doing better than RuneScape 3. You know, it's so unfortunate. I spent so much time on RuneScape, which eventually became RuneScape 3 with Evolution of Combat. And what sucks is like all those stats, all those quests I did over the years, all those things is meaningless because everyone ditched it and went back to old school RuneScape, and for good reason. I get it, I would too, but I didn't have it in me to regrind everything all over.
Free, as it's known. RuneScape was originally released all the way back in 2001 as a browser game, but that's largely changed. As of 2016, the browser version has been mostly replaced with a standalone client. RuneScape is a game where you can level anything by doing that thing. Level fishing by fishing, level magic by using magic. It's a grindy MMO with a staggering 20 years of content to do. As much as RuneScape has evolved past its sibling, old school RuneScape, it's still very much the old school MMO experience in a lot of ways. Slow-paced fights, basic combat, and not so state-of-the-art graphics. RuneScape did add a WoW-like ability system and a very contentious cash shop as it aged, leading to the birth of its younger, older sibling, old school RuneScape. The pay-to-win nature of the RuneScape cash shop didn't go over well with the community, and in a strange but telling twist, the classic version of the game, without the same pay-to-win cash shop, has ended up with far more players than the modern version. If we look at the trend for RuneScape, you can see how insanely popular it was back in the mid-2000s. Absolutely massive. If you were an MMO player and you weren't playing WoW, there was a good chance you were dabbling in some RuneScape. RuneScape has lost a lot of players in the last decade, probably many of whom went to its sibling, old school RuneScape. Number 8, Guild Wars 2, launched in 2012 on PC. Guild Wars 2 is rising 2 places on the list, from number 10 to number 8. Guild Wars 2 had an explosive launch back in 2012 and has since been one of the most popular MMOs on the market. Guild Wars 2 is a free-to-play MMORPG developed by ArenaNet and published by NCSoft. It's worth noting that since this was developed by ArenaNet, it won't feel like an NCSoft game. As MMOs go, Guild Wars does an excellent job of encouraging zone exploration and competition, and tried hard to break the mold of having players run from one yellow exclamation point to the next. And it largely succeeded in those efforts. If you try it out, you'll see what I mean. It's got a very unique questing experience. Guild Wars 2 features a very generous free trial. The first 80 levels are free, and the game does not feature a sub, not even one of those quote-unquote optional subs. So when it says that you can play it for free, it means it. After the first 80 levels, there is a lot of great content to be had in the expansions. However, those will need to be purchased. And these expansions definitely house the best content in the game. It's here where you'll be able to interact with the game's amazing gliding and mount systems that Guild Wars has become so known for. They did recently overhaul their new player experience a bit for their Steam launch, which has allowed you to get access to the first mount in the game very early in the game, as opposed to waiting until you purchase the first expansion at level 80. This was a great change because it's very important for players to get a feel for what those mounts are going to be offering them down the road, and why they're so unique. The mounts in Guild Wars 2 are better than in any other MMO, and its lack of a rigid trinity of tank, healer, and DPS have made it a unique entry into the genre. The Guild Wars 2 main story quest is all into
that's the thing about Guild Wars, right? Like, you just run in there. There's no class defining systems. Like, you can run into a dungeon all rocking damage, right? I have not played Guild Wars, by the way. I've watched a friend play it. Not strictly damage, but all classes have support and DPS type of abilities. Okay, gotcha. How good is the combat in Guild Wars? Would you say it's one of the better combat systems in an MMORPG? Better than WoW 100%? Smooth, dynamic, action-based, B+ combat. All right, interesting. It's good to see it's still doing as well as it's doing after so many years. All right, let's continue.
Entirely voice acted. Both your character and many of the characters that you interact with are voiced. This adds a lot to the story as you get to see and hear your character laugh and cry and go through all of the emotions that dialogue boxes are never able to convey. One of the most memorable parts of Guild Wars 2 is its world events, where upwards of 100 players group up to take down dragons the size of skyscrapers. These fights are truly a sight to behold, and it's really cool to see that many people in the community all get together to take these things down. How is Guild Wars trending? Over the last 5 years, this 2012 MMO's population has been holding strong, if not growing a little. There are a couple of big things that are keeping this MMO from being more popular than it is, but the things that it does right, it does so incredibly well that it's worth checking out. Number 7, Elder Scrolls Online, released in 2014 on PC, Mac, Xbox, and PlayStation. Elder Scrolls Online has just dropped its well-received Gold Road expansion. This expansion added scribing and some great new rewards. Elder Scrolls Online is a beautiful theme park MMO set in the Elder Scrolls universe and takes place about 950 years before Skyrim, and features the trinity of tank, healer, and
yeah, so I played a little bit of ESO. Here's what would happen. I would load up, I would play ESO, at least when it initially came out, and then I would just get off and then go play Skyrim. Look, yeah, obviously it appeals to some players, right? I mean, it's number 7 on this list for a reason.
and TPS. ESO has 12-player raids, 4-player dungeons, as well as a ton of single-player content for you to enjoy. There are 3 tiers of difficulty for each type of content, allowing players to push themselves farther and farther. It definitely leans towards the casual MMO player and stands out as one of the more story-driven MMO experiences out there. Every quest, and I mean every single word of every single quest, is voice acted. ESO is buy to play with an optional sub, so if you want, you can pick up the base game and get hundreds of hours out of it. If you enjoy that, you can subscribe for $15 a month to unlock the other half of the game. Elder Scrolls Online features action combat, which is often a hate it or love it topic for players that try this MMO out. If you're used to tab targeting MMOs of old, it's going to take a little bit of time and a lot of patience to get used to this game's combat. ESO is currently celebrating its 10-year anniversary and has been giving out amazing rewards, huge expansions, and will be capping it all off with its next expansion in 2025. So expect big things to come. If we look at ESO's chart, it seems to be maintaining its population pretty well, and the population for the game is looking very healthy. But the best part about ESO is its mega servers, which prevent the population from being fragmented, which means you won't have any problems finding other people to play with. Sitting here at number 7, it's easily one of the biggest MMOs in the world, and unlike the next MMO on this list, it's not pay to win. Next up, sitting at number 6, we have Lost Ark, which is one of the youngest MMOs on this list and has recently seen its population size implode. In May, it had an average concurrent player base size of 55,000 players on at any one time. In June, that average has dropped down to 19,000.
Holy shit. 1.3 million was its all-time peak? Good God. I thought New World was high. Jesus. PUBG is way higher. Oh, is it really? You ain't lying, man. Look at PUBG. PUBG's at 3.2 million. God dog it. How can so many people play such a shitty game? How? It's so bad. It's so ass. It's so terrible. How? Who plays? Obviously a lot of people play this game. How can over 500,000 people like shite? Oh my God, that is awful.
1,000 players. So it's effectively lost over half of its player base in 1 month. It looks like this young MMO is really starting to struggle. Still, it's holding on to the 6th slot on the list, so it's no slouch yet. Lost Ark is a free-to-play, top-down MMORPG that launched in the East in 2019 and finally here in the West in 2022. Lost Ark is Diablo meets Final Fantasy meets a Las Vegas casino. It has a cash shop and a gear progression system that will frequently remind you of its Eastern MMO roots. The game is absolutely pay to win, or if you prefer, we can call it pay for power, but to its credit, it is also one of the few major MMOs that you can choose to play for completely free. And I'm not talking about those MMOs you can try for free. You can legitimately access and play the entire game for free, if you have the patience and the determination to push through the grind and the monetization that comes with it. There are more currencies than you can count, and your gear progression involves multiple layers of gambling said currencies. Despite its top-down view, it does feature dungeons and raids, and these are definitely some of the most popular content in the game. The ultimate goal in Lost Ark is to sail around the world, collect all of the things, and increase your character's power. The sailing is a lot of fun, especially early on when you first access it. Lost Ark's weaknesses are definitely going to be its pay-to-win monetization and the sheer number of bots that seem to infect it. One of Lost Ark's biggest strengths is its combat, and a lot of the players will tell you that the combat
is there real trading happening a bunch in Lost Ark, guys. That's when bots get really bad in any MMORPG, is when you have real trading. Look, man, I've seen it before, man. I know it makes money for the developers, but bots will ruin your game. They really will.
That is extremely satisfying. On top of that, the game has a wide variety of classes, with more on the way, each with their own look and feel to make sure that anyone can find the right class for them. If we look at Lost Ark's trends, we can see the interest in Lost Ark exploded in 22 when it launched in the West, and then quickly dropped back down to reality after the initial hype. It has fallen a long way since then, but still remains above some heavy hitters like Guild Wars 2 and ESO. Sitting at number 5 is Black Desert Online, released in 2015 and is available on PlayStation, Xbox, Windows, iOS, and Android. Moving up one position from the last time I made this list
it's a sexy
is
game,
Black
though.
Desert Online. If you ask someone why they like BDO, they will almost certainly tell you that it's the combat, that and how beautiful the game is. BDO is an open world game with very little in the way of instance content. You don't play BDO for dungeons and trials. You play BDO to kill things out in an open world, often for hours on end just to gain a few % of a level. BDO is very much a go out and grind type of game. It's also important to note that it's an always on PvP game. Once you hit 50, the PvP is on. Anyone can kill you at almost any time. This is definitely one of the more unique features of the game that makes it popular among PvP players. BDO has some pretty negative associations here in the West thanks to its previous publisher making the game overly pay to win with some pretty heavy-handed monetization on top of that. But since the developer has parted ways with that publisher, they have undone a lot of the less popular aspects of its monetization, making it possibly worth looking into again if you haven't recently. BDO features a ton of unique classes and continues to actively update the game. But how is the game's population trending as of late? The population seems to be holding on. In fact, BDO seems to have largely stopped the bleeding of its player base. If you're more of a PvE player, recent expansions have added a lot of questing and PvE content if you're into that sort of thing. Next up at number 4, MapleStory. Available on PC, almost like an indestructible cockroach surviving a nuclear blast. MapleStory climbs up to number 4 on this list. After being caught lying to its players about drop rates for items they were spending real money to gamble for, it still sits here at number 4. MapleStory launched in 2003 in the East and 2005 in the West. This is another game that was a gateway into the MMO scene for a lot of modern day MMO players. It was immensely successful and still manages to stay relevant nearly 2 decades later. So far, the game has reached over 260 million registered users worldwide and grossed over $3 billion in lifetime revenue. To put that into perspective, the only MMO that comes close to having had that many people try it is World of Warcraft. It's got around 42 different classes for you to try and offers an incredibly unique and accessible experience. In other words, it runs on a toaster and it's got 2 decades worth of content, so there's plenty for you to do. How did the charts look? Well, here we see this 20-year-old MMO beating out modern staples in the genre like RuneScape 3, BDO, and Guild Wars 2, which is pretty impressive for a 2-decade-old entry. Continuing to hold down the 3rd position is Old School RuneScape. Launched in 2013 and continued to climb in population size as if it was completely unaware that MMOs are supposed to become less popular with age. You can either play this game on any computer less than 20 years old or your phone. The system requirements are so low that this is probably the most accessible MMO out there, and I think it owes a lot of its success to that. On top of that, Old School RuneScape is a game run by the players, with each significant change voted on by the player base. Old School
That's a real thing, guys. So essentially, if you want an aspect added into the game, there will be a vote feature. You'll get an alert and there will be a vote up feature, and you could choose what you want in your next updates. That's look, man. I don't care who you are. Every developer on planet Earth can take notes here. That's fucking huge.
RuneScape launched as a result of the community not loving some of the changes that were made to the game. Retail RuneScape added WoW-like abilities and a cash shop that many accused of introducing pay-to-win to the game, and so the community begged the developers for the creation of Old School RuneScape. Jagex finally agreed and created servers that were based on a 2007 version of the game. RuneScape does not have the player follow a linear storyline, but instead has the player choose their own path through the game. Players can choose to kill monsters, go off questing, or level up one of their many different skills. Old School RuneScape is a make the numbers go up game. You skill up, you level up your crafting, your sword wielding, your fishing, anything that you can think of, you can level it up. And a lot of people love doing exactly that. RuneScape is a very sandboxy MMO that allows for a lot of AFK skilling, and thanks to its slow pace and incredibly low computer requirements, it's very accessible. It's got some pretty involved quests that would be near impossible to figure out without the help of add-ons.
Yeah, he's right on that one, dude. Some of the quests in RuneScape are crazy. I don't know how. I mean, without a guide, some of them feel almost impossible to do. They are not the type of quests where you're like, oh yeah, let me just, okay, I see where the direction it wants me to go. No, the quests in RuneScape are crazy.
Add-ons and guides, and it is as old school as it gets, with a very clunky combat system and user interface. It will definitely take some patience and getting used to if you're going to be trying it for the first time in 2024. Old School RuneScape has been so successful that its active player count has now far eclipsed retail RuneScape and a lot of other MMOs for that matter. If we look at how the game is trended on Google, we can see its impressive growth over the years. By the numbers, it appears that Old School RuneScape is held onto the 3rd spot, and at times it had even passed number 2. Pretty impressive for being born from a browser game that was released in 2001. You can dismiss its success and say that it's all bots, but once again, that would fail to explain its massive presence on Google Trends. Number 2, and perhaps the most surprising upset on this list, is going to be the fact that World of Warcraft has been dethroned, though likely only temporarily. Sliding to number 2 is World of Warcraft. Most likely, a lot of WoW players are taking a break from WoW to play the MMO sitting at number 1 this month, before they return to WoW. The lead up to Dragonflight propelled WoW far above Final Fantasy XIV, and it held onto that spot until Final Fantasy XIV dropped its Dawntrail expansion. Public opinion of World of Warcraft has massively improved since its self-inflicted wound that was Shadowlands. Now with Chris Metzen at the helm, the community has high hopes for a return to form. With the first of 3 announced expansions releasing later this year, it's going to be a massive year for World of Warcraft, with some players clocking in nearly 20 years played. It's a testament to the massive appeal this game was able to garner. World of Warcraft is a massive, seamless MMO that still handles scale better than any other MMO I've played. You can see a location, a mountain, a castle, multiple zones away, and get on your mount and fly there. This is something that a lot of MMOs created well after World of Warcraft are still unable to deliver on, thanks to them being broken down into smaller zones with rampant load screens in between. WoW still looks great thanks to an art style that has aged incredibly well over the years, and perhaps more importantly, numerous engine overhauls that have kept it feeling somewhat modern despite being 2 decades old. World of Warcraft features the trinity of tank, healer, and DPS, and has 13 unique classes, each with multiple different specs for you to spec into. There's a lot of single player content for you to level your way up with, as well as dungeons and raids. WoW's dungeons and raids are among the best out there, but be prepared to devote a good chunk of time to them, as they're quite a bit longer than in other MMOs. So what does interest in WoW look like according to the trends? You can see on this graph how WoW absolutely dwarfs the competition in its prime back in the early 2000s. Looking at its popularity from 2004 to 2012, nothing else even comes close. When we look at the last few years, WoW usually still sits at the #1 spot, but Final Fantasy has reached a point where it's able to pass it during its expansion launches. This titan of the industry is still just that, a titan in the industry, but it's not the untouchable titan that it once was. And #1, Final Fantasy XIV, released in 2010, available on PlayStation, PC, and Xbox. Right now, the most popular MMO in the world is Final Fantasy XIV. This game has earned this spot by devoting itself to improving the quality of the content it released for 14 years in a row, but perhaps just as important is the fact that it treats its community better than any other MMO out right now, and that mentality has clearly paid huge dividends for Square Enix. The new Dawntrail expansion propelled Final Fantasy to the #1 spot, adding 2 new classes, a ton of new zones, and starting a brand new storyline after wrapping up the previous 10-year story during the Endwalker expansion. Final Fantasy XIV continues to be a story that gives hope to rocky MMO launches today. You can fix an imperfect MMO if you're willing to listen to the feedback of the community and put the work in, but you have to resist the urge to over-monetize your MMO. Final Fantasy XIV is a fantasy MMORPG that places a massive focus on the story. The single-player story content comes first, and every piece of the game that follows is built in service to that end. The dungeons are unlocked as part of the story. The trials are unlocked and woven into the story. Some of the most memorable cutscenes in the game are delivered in the middle of a trial while you're fighting for your life. Final Fantasy XIV also features 22 different classes and the trinity of tank, healer, and DPS. Final Fantasy XIV has one of the most generous free trials out of any MMO, allowing you to play the first 70 levels and the first 2 expansions for completely free. After that, you do have to buy the game and pay the mandatory $13 a month subscription. Thanks to this mandatory sub, however, the game is free of pay to win. It's free of loot boxes, and it has hundreds of cosmetics and mounts that you can earn by playing the game. 2024 has been an incredible year for Final Fantasy XIV, but will it be able to hold on to the #1 spot? We'll check back in 6 months at the beginning of 2025 and find out when we update this list. If we look at how Final Fantasy XIV has been trending, it's been battling WoW for the top spot for the last few years, but with WoW's World Soul Saga around the corner, holding on to the #1 spot is going to be tough. We have seen some massive upsets in 2024, with popular MMOs clawing their way to the top or sliding their way to the bottom. We've seen multiple MMOs drop stunning expansion like ESO's Gold Road and Final Fantasy XIV's Dawntrail, and arguably the biggest MMO expansion has yet to drop, with World of Warcraft's War Within expansion coming out on August 26. Did any of the results on this list surprise you? Let me know in the comments below. Which MMOs do you think are going to move up or down in the future? And where do you...
Solid video, man. Solid video. I will say this though. For those asking, what about this game? What about that game? This list is definitely for more traditional MMOs versus what so many things get thrown into as an MMO. The other thing is, I noticed some of the things that were put up weren't necessarily lists of the population. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this just Google Trends? Isn't this just showing the search for those games? And although that is an indication or an indicator, it's not actually showing its active players. Some of the statistics and numbers that were put up actually showed active players, but there was a lot that was just like, here's Google, just the Google trend for it. So, and the other thing is too, like, where do you even go out there to even grab data for all of this? Steam Charts has their numbers up, but I know a lot of these games don't don't post them. RuneScape actually puts their numbers up on their website. So you can go to RuneScape's website and see it all the time, how many active players are currently playing at any given moment. But with that being said, though, I don't think it's far off to see if you were just to take traditional games into account, you know, old school RuneScape number 3, that's not a surprise to me. World of Warcraft here at number 2, Bad Limit, Final Fantasy XIV. I mean, these are 3 MMORPGs that whenever I still dabble from time to time in traditional MMOs, those are the 3 that I dabble in. So still probably accurate. My thing is this though, I've gone back to Final Fantasy a couple of times and I've gone back to RuneScape a few times. I don't know if I've just changed as a gamer, but like, I think I just like more action-packed combat now. And, you know, especially like RuneScape, which is just click, click, you know what I mean? And there's tremendous skill involved in all of these games. So I'm not taking away from that. I think I've just become more of an action junkie. Have I played WoW? Classic? Yeah, dude, I played WoW. I didn't play WoW. So for me, it was always RuneScape, but I did play WoW back in the day. And I have, you know, gone back and dabbled in WoW from time to time. So I played a lot of Final Fantasy XIV as well. Matter of fact, I would have kept playing Final Fantasy XIV because I was playing it religiously. However, the year that I got into Final Fantasy, and I got into it heavily, was the year that Destiny dropped. And it went from me playing Final Fantasy XIV literally every single day, and Destiny dropped. I picked up Destiny, and then that was it, dude. Destiny had me by the balls. And not even at first. Destiny was a weird one. Destiny was one of those games I played. We beat the campaign. I got to the end of it, and I was like, is that it? Is that really the game? And then, I don't know. Then suddenly it was like, wait, what's this Nightfall thing? You know? Who's this Xur guy? And then whenever they dropped Vault of Glass and we had a raid in the game, oh my God, that was when I was like, okay, this is my new home. As an action junkie too, Final Fantasy Story for A Realm Reborn is insanely slow. Yeah. The problem is like what he mentioned, which is a good thing. A lot of the trials and dungeons are interwoven into the story. So you have to do the story. And the story, like I found entertaining, but it's a lot of dialogue, everything. Out of everything on this list, if there was one game you would ever want for us to play, to dabble in right here on stream, what would it be? Can I just tell you what I would actually like to dabble in just once? I know it has some pay to win aspects for sure, but it intrigues me that so many people say that the combat system of BDO is so good. I'm really curious, like, is it really that good? Is it weird I can't play an MMO, but I'll watch them? I don't think that's weird at all, dude. I mean, we play video games for a living. To be quite honest with you, and time is like as equally as important as money. And time is money, right? But what I actually do before I'm like, okay, am I going to invest the next 100 hours or more into this game? I go watch streams all the time. I go watch people's streams. Or even a YouTube video. Like, I need to see it. And that gives me an idea of what I'm looking at. We said, which MMO would you like to see us try? 54% right now say BDO.
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.